My family's journey isn't as straightforward as one might think. We immigrated to the U.S. and settled in a small Jewish community within a mid-sized southern city. Like in many tight-knit communities, our families were close, bonded not only by proximity but also by our shared ethnicity. Our parents were childhood friends, and their connection was deeply rooted in the origins of our community. Temple events and holiday gatherings were pivotal moments that strengthened the ties among the younger generations. Growing up, there weren't many boys my age, so my older brother became my primary companion, along with my two female friends. Sarah, whose mother was friends with my father since their childhood, grew up next door. While most families in our community were involved in businesses like shops and stores, Sarah's father stood out as a professional, an attorney. Rebecca Katz's family owned several upscale women's clothing stores, and her mother, a close friend of mine, shared a desire to bring our families closer together. My family's business, Solomon and Son Scrapyard, though not as glamorous, was a part of our community, albeit sometimes viewed with less esteem by certain individuals. In our old country, it wasn't uncommon for families to arrange marriages to strengthen community bonds. Rebecca's mother and mine had ambitions of uniting our families, despite Rebecca's father's initial reservations. He was a suited professional, while my father was more accustomed to work attire. As we entered our teenage years, I didn't resist the match. Rebecca was undeniably beautiful, petite and elegant, resembling what you might call a cheerleader build today. However, it was Sarah who truly captured my heart. Though equally attractive, she had a fuller figure and a deeper emotional connection with me. Throughout high school, the three of us were inseparable until Sarah pursued law studies up north, while Rebecca and I married at a young age. I attended our local university while working alongside my father and grandfather at our scrapyard. The lessons learned from them were invaluable, surpassing those taught in any classroom. By the time I completed my finance degree, I was also a father to two boys, Max and David, born within a year and a half of each other. Max was named after my maternal grandfather, while David was named in honor of Rebecca's grandfather. With my formal education finished, I encouraged Rebecca to pursue her own degree, but she found fulfillment in being a stay-at-home mother. Looking back, I'm grateful she made that choice, as she became the epitome of the beautiful, dedicated soccer mom for the next 12 or 13 years. My informal education began with my father and Zeta, who emphasized the importance of keeping our family wealth discreet. Even my bub was unaware of their riches. Zeta's father had lost everything to the Nazis during their occupation of Poland. While our salvage business was our main source of income in our family, the goal was always to find opportunities for wealth accumulation. My grandfather was involved in gold and silver, my father in the stock market, and my brother in currency trading. It took me some time to find my niche. I initially dabbled in commodity trading but eventually found my passion in commercial properties. I recall my father's words, "Let them believe you're just another working schmuck. You'll know that you could buy them with your pocket change." When my sons reached the ages of 16 and 17, I began imparting financial wisdom to them. I stressed the importance of avoiding excessive consumerism and using money to build wealth rather than chasing after fleeting luxuries. An unexpected temptation came in the form of Rebecca. Once our boys were in high school, a friend persuaded her to join Stevens Real Estate. She started off answering phones and setting appointments but was drawn to the substantial commission checks earned by agents. Determined, she obtained her real estate license with the help of her boss, Stevens, who was a bit too close to my liking. He assisted her in closing her first few sales. With her first commission, she traded our Ford Explorer for a BMW coupe, believing it would enhance her professional image. It struck me as a superficial move, reminiscent of her affluent upbringing. After 19 years of marriage, I loved Rebecca deeply, yet I struggled with jealousy. She had been an exemplary wife and mother, maintaining her appearance and fulfilling my needs. However, her newfound success in real estate changed our dynamic. Her extravagant spending on flashy possessions and outings with colleagues created distance between us. While she may not have noticed, our intimacy suffered, and I couldn't shake the feeling of being neglected or replaced. Despite our love, ours was an arranged marriage lacking passion. If Rebecca desired a divorce, I would oblige. Her father's prenuptial agreement offered protection, and her trust fund remained inaccessible until she turned 40. My concern lay more in the disrespect I felt in our relationship's changing dynamic. The tipping point came at the company picnic. Max and David had a baseball game that afternoon, so we arrived at Lakeside Park after 3 p.m. I relished the disapproving glances from the snobbish attendees as I pulled up in my work truck, a 10-year-old Ford F-150 crew cab with Solomon and Sons painted on the doors. The disdain was palpable as I parked next to their Audis and Beamers. While the boys dug into the catered lunch, I scanned the crowd for my wife. Coworkers gave me odd looks, indicating they were hiding something. Spotting the boys at a picnic table, I headed toward the lake path, where I saw Rebecca and Stephen strolling hand in hand. My approach was met with several of Rebecca's male colleagues intercepting me, and we all converged in the same spot. Stephen smirked. "Rebecca, look who's here, your husband, Scrappy Dot." His cronies chuckled, but my wife appeared uncomfortable. I wasn't bothered by Stephen's attempt to demean me, knowing I could buy him out brought a sense of satisfaction. What I couldn't tolerate was the knowledge that he was sleeping with my wife, which explained our dwindling sex life and her frequent late nights. Addressing Stevens directly, I asked, "How long have you been sleeping with my wife?" He arrogantly replied, "That's none of your business. You don't own her." Rebecca stepped back, clearly ashamed that I had discovered her infidelity. "While I may not own her, we have a contract recognized by this state, where we pledged fidelity till death do us part." I turned to Stevens, seething with anger. "I've tolerated your insults for 6 months, but enough is enough. I've dealt with jerks like you all my life. If you want my wife, buy out her contract. She'll earn $80K by year end, so you'll need to pay me $2 million to release her." Rebecca's eyes narrowed, understanding the implication that I was treating her like a commodity. "Oh, right. You're not that liquid, are you? And where's your wife today?" I glanced around. His goons grabbed me from behind, but I reacted swiftly, breaking free and delivering blows to their noses. The pain was excruciating, but I remained focused, aware of my sons calling out for me amidst the chaos. My sons arrived swiftly. Facing Stevens and Rebecca, we were now drawing a crowd. "Fine, if you want her, she's all yours. Rebecca, consider our contract terminated effective immediately. Have your dad send some guys over tomorrow to collect your belongings. Whatever's left the day after tomorrow goes in the trash." As Max and David urged me to leave, Stevens couldn't resist hurling insults. "You're just a junk dealer, and that's all you'll ever be," he shouted after me. I turned back, my anger boiling over. He began to back away slowly, pulling Rebecca between us. She attempted to calm me down, reaching out to touch my chest, but I brushed her hands away. I wanted Stevens' employees to witness his cowardice. Relenting at my son's urging, I finally left the scene. Glancing at my wife once we were in the truck, I frowned. "Fine, Rebecca, he can have you. I knew you'd leave us the day you bought that Beamer. Couldn't you have waited another 2 years until the boys were off to college?" Inside the truck, Max couldn't contain himself. "Dad, with what you and Granddad have taught us, you could buy that guy with the money in your back pocket." I nodded in agreement. "Boys, there are a couple of lessons here. First, I'm tired of people like Stevens disrespecting us, whether it's because we're Jewish or because they think they're better than us. You're only better than someone else if you're taking the moral high ground and they're a piece of crap. Secondly, I don't get mad, I get even. It might not be tomorrow or next year, but I will get even." David handed me a business card he received earlier. "A lady gave me this." I glanced at the card. Vivian Spencer. Perhaps a potential ally. Later that day, the boys and I moved the last of Rebecca's belongings into the garage. I had a pile of black trash bags stacked in her parking spot. In my office, I instructed Max to gather information on Stephen's real estate holdings, while David was tasked with finding out who he owed money to. "Take your time. This is a learning experience," I told them. While Max drove David to my brother's house for assistance, I took a moment to search for family law attorneys. Sarah's ad caught my eye, and I noted her number to call on Monday. By Sunday afternoon, no one had come for Rebecca's belongings. I called my father-in-law. "Hey Dan, when are your guys coming for Rebecca's things?" There was a moment of silence on the other end of the line before Dan spoke. I'm at a loss. Why would she do that? This was the conversation I had been dreading. Rebecca decided to upgrade and is involved with her boss, Stevens. So, Dan, I've asked her to leave. The boys and I packed up her belongings, and I've told her to have your warehouse guys pick them up today, or they'll be thrown out. Do you need more time? I can wait until Tuesday if necessary. I explained yesterday's events and how she had been pulling away from the family for months. After a pause, Dan replied, I'm sorry, son. We didn't raise her to behave like that. I understand, sir. But I want you to know that I have respect for you. I'd like to come over and return the jewelry your wife gave Rebecca so she can have it. I'll keep what I gave her. Maybe one day your grandsons can give it to someone they love. As I was about to end the call, I added, Dan, I don't trust Stevens at all. I suspect he's after a trust fund or planning to involve you in some scheme. Stay vigilant, sir. On Monday, I met with Sarah. She was as lovely as I remembered, with a figure that had matured in all the right ways. I was taken aback. She greeted me with a hug when I entered her office and gestured for me to sit. It's good to see you. I didn't know you were back in town. She gave me a puzzled look. I can't represent you. I know both of you, and we've been friends since childhood. I won't take sides, but I've been expecting this for a while. Rebecca and I have lunch every Thursday. Really? She never told you? No, I had no idea. How long has this been going on? About 6 months. She seemed to be analyzing something. Anyway, I could tell she was different and hiding something, so being a lawyer, I assumed the worst. That's why I can't represent you. Sarah took my hand. I told her I knew she was someone's mistress and that I couldn't represent her in a divorce, which I knew was inevitable. Cheaters always get caught, and I plan on swooping in when her ex is available. I felt a surge of happiness. Could this woman really be interested in me? I don't date married men, so it'll be a while, she said with a smile. Maybe we can have lunches as friends and get reacquainted. That would be nice. Sarah stood up, straightened her outfit, and gestured for me to follow her down the hall to her cousin Gerald's office. He's waiting for you and will handle your divorce. He has the PI reports and documentation. I didn't hire a PI. Sarah smiled as she opened Gerald's door. It was taken care of by a concerned friend. She hugged him warmly before gently nudging me into the room. Girl will take good care of you. Gerald, like me, had put on some weight and was experiencing a bit of hair loss. He shook my hand and gestured for me to sit. If there's a prenup, it'll make things easier. Did you bring your financials and any relevant information? It's all in the messenger bag: prenup, financials, property and assets, and notes about her behavior leading up to the incident at her company picnic, I replied. Gerald walked behind his desk and opened a drawer, pulling out a thick envelope. Here's a detailed report from our PI. The DVD should probably be viewed in private, he said, patting my shoulder. From my experience, don't take anything she says in the DVD to heart. Cheaters always badmouth their spouses to their new lovers. He motioned me toward the door. I'll get to work on this ASAP so someone isn't riding my ass, he added with a smile. I'll reach out in a few days. When I got home, I couldn't decide whether to watch the DVD, so I went with Plan B and called Vivian Spencer. Her voice was pleasant over the phone, which I expected given her position as a top producer for Stevens. She cut right to the chase. Vivian had witnessed the events at the picnic and was pleased that I had found out about my wife and Stevens. As expected, she confirmed that there had been rumors around the office about their involvement for several months, but she couldn't provide solid evidence. However, she felt Stevens was distracted from his business by something he was planning. Are you planning revenge on them? Vivian asked. Of course, but it's a long-term plan. Having eyes and ears on the inside would be useful. Would $500 per week secure a set of eyes? I believe it would. Since my father-in-law didn't want to pay his guys to haul off Rebecca's things, I called a local women's shelter to arrange pickup. As I was about to watch the DVD, the doorbell rang. It was a homeless-looking man in a van for the pickup. It seemed fate didn't want me to watch my wife's greatest hits. I helped the men load the van and slipped each a $50 bill for their help. In the usual office drama, Rebecca and Stevens were served at work, and the gossip mill was running at full speed. I set aside the evening for retaliation from my wife, but she remained strangely quiet. Later that evening, while the boys were out with friends, I received 2 phone calls. The first was from Gerald. Rebecca's attorney, after watching the DVD and reviewing the PI reports, advised her to sign the divorce papers to avoid a court battle and potentially losing half of her trust fund, as per the prenup. Especially since I didn't ask for any part of her trust, she should be grateful. The second call was from Vivian Spencer. She had investigated after hours and discovered that Stevens had plans to build an entire subdivision outside the city, his own planned community. He was already buying parcels of land. She sent me a photo from her phone showing the map and plans. Vivian was worth every dollar I paid her. Deep down, I knew Stevens was furious. My commercial real estate company, Max D, had strategically acquired key parcels of land for his subdivision, forcing him to redesign around our properties. When he attempted a plan B by purchasing land across the highway, he discovered that Max D owned parcels in a peculiar pattern, limiting his options for the subdivision layout to more cul-de-sacs than originally planned. The divorce proceedings concluded swiftly, suggesting someone had expedited the process. I showed up in court wearing my work uniform with my name on the pocket, while Rebecca was impeccably dressed. Although I didn't harbor hatred toward her, she had deeply disappointed me. We had shared some good moments, and I was grateful for our 2 wonderful kids. After the divorce was finalized, curiosity got the better of me, and I decided to watch the DVD. I needed to understand what drove her actions, perhaps find some closure. What unfolded on my computer screen surprised me. The first video, captured through Stevens' office window, didn't reveal any physical contact due to his obstructing presence. However, it was clear that Rebecca was performing oral sex on him. He then positioned her facing the window, lifted her skirt, and engaged in intercourse from behind as she leaned on his desk. It was over quickly. The second video, shot in a dimly lit hotel room with poor sound quality, showed a side of Rebecca I had almost forgotten, sensual and alluring. She knelt on the bed as Stevens undressed, her blouse falling to the floor as she sensually caressed herself. Her fingers lingered on her breasts, playing with her nipples, which I knew were sensitive. As they kissed, she unzipped her skirt with a playful giggle, wiggling out of it as they embraced. I fast-forwarded to the moment she took control, riding him cowgirl style, something she rarely did with me. She seemed to be in charge of their intimacy. I closed the window, considering keeping the video for my personal use. I wondered if Stevens' slimmer physique was more comfortable for her. She had occasionally mentioned discomfort due to my size. Perhaps I should have listened more attentively. We lay on our sides, facing each other, exploring each other's bodies with kisses and caresses. I cupped her breasts through the lace of her lingerie, feeling her hard nipples. She whispered for me to remove it, and I struggled with the clasp before releasing her incredible breasts. She straddled my waist, her full bottom pressing against my erection. Taking both of my hands, she placed them on her breasts, the lust in her eyes fueling me. Her breasts were full and heavy, yet perky in a surprising way. Her large nipples stood proudly, perfectly positioned. As she lowered herself to kiss me, I moved my hands to her back. After our kiss, she pushed her panties down and moved off my hips with a devilish grin. She pulled down my briefs, revealing my hard erection. With a stroke of her hand, she teased me, expressing her love for big, thick cocks. Straddling me once again, she began to guide me inside her, taking it slow as it had been a while for her. Time seemed to slow down as she took more of me, rocking back and forth. We kissed as she rode me, her pace increasing as she reached orgasm. As she approached her third orgasm, she rode me faster and faster, pushing me over the edge. We came together, collapsing onto the bed in satisfaction. After cleaning up, we returned to bed, where we talked and kissed before making love. Our connection was deep and passionate, reflecting the love we had long postponed. Later, at her home, Sarah expressed her desire for a relationship with me. She made it clear that she loved me and wanted me, but understood if I needed time. I assured her of my love and willingness to follow her lead in deciding the future of our relationship. We discussed the possibility of not getting married, respecting each other's feelings and choices. Her smile reassured me that we were on the same page. As I drove past her father's main residence, I noticed him outside walking his dog. I slowed down and stopped beside him, rolling down the window to greet him. He walked over to speak with me. "Solomon, I'm glad that my daughter found you, and I hope that you will make her happy. It's a lot to take on when you date a woman with a child, especially when you have 2 sons to think about," he said, pausing for a moment. "Your father and Sarah's mother had a friendship that made me jealous of him. When you were children, I didn't treat you well because of that, and I am sorry for it," he continued, looking somber. "After my wife passed, I married a trophy wife without a prenup, and she cleaned me out in the divorce. I should have known better, but I was lonely. I was broke and didn't want anyone to know, but one day after the divorce, your father pulls up here. He came over to check on me. I confessed that she had cleaned me out, maxed out numerous credit cards, and left me with a ton of debt. I made a lot of money, but she spent more than even I made. He took me aside and taught me the old ways of 10% and reinvesting in myself. He loaned me a large sum of money to pay off the high-interest credit cards. I could never thank your family enough. There is nothing more that I would like than for my grandson to be like the Solomons." I smiled gratefully. "That's the best compliment that I could ever get." "Thank you, sir. I'll see you soon." I waved and drove away into the night. Stephen's troubles began as soon as he had the groundbreaking for his planned community. With connections to various unions and trucking concerns, somehow his lumber would get delivered and unloaded at the wrong location. Unions would picket, claiming he was using non-union labor, and some tradesmen would not cross the picket line. City inspectors found numerous building issues, causing setbacks and delays. 6 months after my divorce, Stevens and his wife, not my ex, were mugged in the parking lot of a fancy 5-star restaurant. She was uninjured, but he took several hard punches to his face and abdomen. Banks were not happy with the delays Stevens was facing. He had difficulties paying the interest on his construction loans, and his neglected real estate business was not as profitable as before. Employees would never run his business like he would. Max D offered to purchase some of Stevens' loans from the banks involved in the project, and the largest loan holder eagerly agreed to get the loan off their books. After defaulting on 3 interest payments, Max D called the loan to be paid in full. At this point, Stevens had a model home and 8 houses in various stages of completion. I had been prepared for this moment, anticipating the day when my true identity as Max D would be revealed. I discreetly operated under another Delaware corporation. Setting up a meeting with Stevens at my attorney's office, Gerald represented my interests. With Gerald's guidance, Stevens reluctantly signed over the project's assets to Max D, saving himself from bankruptcy but facing public shame for his failure. I was proud to have resolved the situation swiftly. It was evident that Stevens had targeted my ex-wife's trust fund, due to her on her 40th birthday next year. His motive was clear: exploit her and her money. Stevens and his wife agreed to meet with the owner of Max D, unaware that it was me. Their surprise was palpable when I entered the room wearing my work attire, with Max D embroidered on the left chest. Stevens confronted Gerald with anger, but Gerald's grin revealed his satisfaction. "Mr. Stevens, I can confirm that Mr. Solomon is the owner of Max D, and now the owner of your real estate holdings on this project." Taking my seat at the head of the table, I addressed Mrs. Stevens, expressing regret for the situation. "The hardships you faced are a result of your husband's affair with my ex-wife. He flaunted it in my face, and I took action." Leaning back, I continued, addressing Stevens directly. "Men like you often believe they're superior. I prefer to let people underestimate me, gaining an edge. While you squander your money on frivolous items, I invest in real assets, accumulating wealth." Offering to purchase his business, I outlined the terms: ownership transferred to me with Stevens retaining the public face but losing ownership. His income would be commission-based, as in the beginning. Stevens reacted with anger, refusing to sell to me. His wife seemed less certain. Later, at a celebratory lunch with Sarah, our relationship progressing positively, she dropped a bombshell: Rebecca is pregnant. I was stunned. How could she be so reckless? She's almost 40. She wants to discuss it with us later, Sarah said, smiling at me. I still meet with Rebecca every week for lunch. We'll always be friends. That's how I found out. She's about 3 months along. Knowing Rebecca was aware of Sarah and me made me feel uneasy. Rebecca didn't want to remarry or give us custody of the baby. She only wanted to ask if it was okay to give the baby the last name Solomon, as it was still her last name. She didn't plan to name a father on the birth certificate. I need to consult with my parents first, I said. It's a big decision. You chose to be with someone else, and now you want me to make a decision that will affect the whole family and Sarah too. Why not name the baby Katz? Rebecca frowned. My father threatened to extend the age requirement on my trust to 60 if I named it after Stevens. He believes Stevens only wanted access to my trust, and my father won't allow it. If I named it Katz, everyone would know it's a non-Jewish child. Seeing Rebecca tear up, Sarah went to comfort her. I watched as the two women held each other, realizing the complexities of the situation. Eventually, my parents convinced me to allow the baby to have the last name Solomon and list me as the father. While I wasn't fully on board at first, when she gave birth to that beautiful baby girl, I couldn't have been happier. My mother was ecstatic because there hadn't been a Solomon girl in 3 generations. My sons were hesitant at first, but gradually accepted their new sibling. It was easier for them to have a stepbrother than a stepsister. They embraced Sarah's son long before I did. Max, following in my footsteps, attended our local university. By the end of his freshman year, he owned 2 laundromats, earning him nearly $60,000 a year in profit. Today, we looked at a car wash together. David, interested in cryptocurrency, planned to reinvest his profits into precious metals. He wanted his brother's help in buying a pawn shop for a steady stream of gold and silver. Sarah taught me that a daughter needs a father as much as a son does. We spend time with our daughter 2 nights a week and most weekends when Rebecca is busy. Initially strange for her to call me daddy, I realized you can't blame a child for the father's mistakes. Sarah, as her second mother, spoils her the most. Raising Rebecca's daughter as my own feels like the best revenge. I consider it an equal exchange. Thanks for watching. Subscribe to the channel not to miss new videos.